a lot of people talk about Ronald Koeman sitting on his hands, Sid.
Yeah, and look, I think you can go further than that because, you know, as you've already said, when the penalty goes in, 25, 30 minutes to go, add additional time, I think it was about 33, 34 minutes to go. You can make changes at that point if you want to. You don't need to do them straight away, but you can make changes at that point, or you can make the changes at any time for the next 33 minutes. That's a lot of time to be dealing with. Some of the problems that Barcelona had, I think, were already clear. Some of them became more clear over the next 5 or 6 minutes as Real Madrid settled into a tight, organised, slightly more defensive approach, and Barcelona was struggling to find spaces through there. At that point, you can make some changes. One of them, I think, was already fairly clear earlier in the game, and that was that Pedri wasn't having a particularly good time of it as a narrow right-sided attacking midfielder. I don't think it's his natural role. I don't think he was particularly happy in it, but potentially, although we'll never know this for sure, potentially he was overawed by it being a Clásico at the age of just 17. Although personally I think it was more about the system and the structure than about that. You can maybe think about making a change through the middle of the midfield where De Jong and Busquets wasn't particularly working, or possibly even of Coutinho. But what happens, of course, is that nothing happens until the 81st minute, at which point there are 3 changes made at once. And those are 3 changes of basically saying, okay, let's push some forwards onto the pitch. And then, of course, to make that even more, if you like, of a kind of a statement of, right, all of my attacking power on the pitch at the same time, 5 minutes later, Martin Braithwaite goes on as well. And in this time, you've lost Sergio Busquets goes off, Jordi Alba goes off. Obviously, not everyone who's gone off is defensive, so you lose Ansu Fati as well, which, by the way, is in itself questionable, taking off the one player who seemed most likely to score. But when you make these changes, what happens is, what is, in my opinion at least, although, you know, I'm perfectly prepared for people to disagree with me on this, in my opinion at least, a structure, a formation that doesn't convince anyway, gets weakened even further when you do that. You know, you take off players, you break up the structure, you put everyone up front, everyone you've got onto the pitch, let's put people forward. Well, just having more forwards doesn't make you more attacking. Someone's got to get the ball to those players. You've got to be able to have the ability to withstand the counter-attacks of the other team. And the best way of looking at this is to say that while Barcelona created very, very little from the penalty onwards, Real Madrid created little as well, partly because they weren't looking to. What happens with those 3 changes? Well, immediately after those 3 changes, between then and the end of the game, there are 3 very clear chances. And all 3 of them are for Real Madrid. None of them are for Barcelona. Griezmann comes on, for example, and touches the ball just once. So one thing's for sure, it didn't work. Now, whether that's because the whole idea of doing that was completely flawed or a series of other elements, but the bottom line is it did not work. And to be honest with you, doing it that late and doing it in that kind of that sort of big sense of, right, everything on the pitch, I don't think it was ever likely to work.
And it's not going to let off now for Barcelona because, of course, in the Champions League, they're up against Juventus, another proper test that Ronald Koeman would really have loved to avoid.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he probably would have loved to avoid it. I mean, one thing I think we should probably say in terms of the context surrounding Koeman is that everybody knows that this is a work in progress. You know, it's only week 7 of the league season. Everybody knows that a whole load of the players that Koeman wanted to come in this summer didn't come in, that he wants to change the team, that he's bringing young players through. And most people, by the way, did applaud the decision to play 2 17-year-olds. At the very least, they took this as a sign that Koeman was brave, that he wasn't necessarily going to be driven by names. The fact that he left Griezmann on the bench was seen as broadly a positive thing, albeit post-game maybe you can question that. But you're right, you still don't want to go from that Clásico into facing Juventus with a team that so far has not quite found its feet. And I personally think that for all the discussion of the forwards, we come back to that double pivot position in midfield with De Jong and Busquets, which I thought was horribly overrun by Real Madrid. And I think the nature of that formation, we come back to what I was saying about I wasn't convinced even before that change, which is a 4-2-3-1. But what basically happens is it's a 4 and a 2, and then a big gap, and then 4 forwards in a kind of chaotic swirl, a splodge at the top of the pitch. And of course that means that when you've got runners either side of the midfield too, they get an awful lot of space to run through. Look at Valverde on the first goal for Real Madrid. Look at Modric on the third goal for Real Madrid. They're very similar runs through very similar spaces. And I think De Jong and I think Busquets are really don't either have the legs or the structure around them or the positional qualities within this formation to prevent that from happening.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.